And that was my introduction to process improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't believe, like an accounting department is where you started this whole journey of process improvement, and it became Sigma eventually. I'll give you that story a bit. But it was started in an accounting department with my boss, who actually was like, Tony, you're going to help us figure this all out. And so we took this head count, and before you knew it, we were able to eliminate three of the fixers. We kept one there because we need to make sure there was integrity in our published financial reports. But we were able to take three of those fixes and move them back into the string.
Mm.
And then what was really exciting, and IBM made a big deal about this, we were able to get our financial reports out to Wall Street 2 days sooner than we ever did before.
Hey everybody, I'm Elizabeth Swan.
And I'm Tracy O'Rourke, and we're from the Just in Time Cafe. Welcome to our podcast. At the cafe, we wrestle with tough questions, we talk to groundbreakers, discuss great books, and we get insights from leaders and practitioners who are making a difference in the world.
We let you in on helpful apps, we bring you the news, and challenge the status quo so you can build your problem-solving muscles.
So Elizabeth, what is on the cafe menu?
All right, Tracy, it's a little nippy here in the Northeast. I wish there was some like hot chocolate on this menu, but I think there's some good, exciting stuff that will cause some friction. Friction's good for heat, right? So today's highlight is our interview with Tony Dottino, author, consultant, and one of the rare people who was actually in the room when modern quality thinking was taking shape. Tony worked alongside legends like Deming, Joseph Juran, Philip Crosby. He helped shape what became the Malcolm Baldrige Award, and he influenced early Six Sigma thinking, and he's still at it. So we'll discuss what's changed, what hasn't, and what's got him on television now. For Hot Apps, we'll explore a mind mapping tool that helps teams see problems in new ways. And for Q&A, we'll unpack a deceptively simple question. What is a shield? And how can it help change agents with actually changing things? So from quality legends to modern day change agents, Tracy, let's get into it.
Up next is Hot Apps.
Yeah, today we're going back to one of our favorite whiteboards, which is MURAL. We're going to test out the embedded mind mapping tool. Tracy, in your initial research, you found more than a handful of free mind mapping apps and a few paid versions. And what made you land on MURAL?
Yeah, so what's really interesting about mind maps is they're so common. You know, I can't really say it's a process map, but it is a very common thing that a lot of organizations or apps have. And so when you and I were talking about maybe highlighting this particular tool, there's a lot of them that, a lot of different software that has it. But I really wanted to make sure we chose something, as we always like to do. We like to be software agnostic. Mm-hmm. So we want to look at a free resource to share. So people, if they don't have a resource already, they can go into it free and try it out and get a feel for how the tool works. It shouldn't just be about the app, right? So, and you know what? There's probably several folks that if they haven't heard of mind mapping before, I bet you they probably have a software already that is doing it or that has the ability to do it. So we like to focus not on the software per se or the app, but really the tool. And MURAL allows us to do that very easily. So I guess we're paying kudos to the app anyway.
Well, I like that you pointed out, and everyone should check that, like you've got software right now, it may already include a mind map feature that you're not aware of. So check that for yourself. I am a MURAL fan, and it's really fun to revisit it. I don't think I've been in MURAL for a little while, so I enjoyed jumping back in there. So Tracy, why don't you show folks what you did? We'll give you a little view as Tracy describes kind of what she did to create the mind map.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I love Mural too. And the reason why is because, first of all, it's accessible to everybody and it's really easy to just start using it. So ultimately, I just went into Mural, I created a new mural, and then I looked for the mind mapping template and hit add. What? That was easy.
Too easy.
Right? And so then I could really focus on the process of creating a mind map. And again, a mind map's a visual way to organize your thoughts. It's supposed to, replicate how the brain organizes things, which is why it could be so helpful to connect and remember things. So typically you start with one main idea in the center, and then you branch out into some related topics, and you keep building out the branches as ideas get more and more specific. So it looks like, I think I love the process itself because it can be really helpful because, you might have, a thought that you're going down one branch and you're expanding on that thought, and then something pops up and you're like, oh, that belongs over here. So it really does help with the categorizing of things. And I think sometimes that's the biggest challenge is there's so much information out there, but we have to process information in a way that allows our brain to do it easy. So that's what I love about the mind mapping. So since Tony had brought up this idea of a shield, which we'll talk about more and you'll hear more in the interview, I went ahead and did a mind map on this idea of a shield. Nice. So the shield that we're talking about is sort of, when you're in a continuous improvement program and you're trying to make progress and either people are picking apart your results or the program, or, they're attacking, if you will, whatever that continuous improvement effort is, or projects even. And so, he was talking about how he had a great shield in some of his work when he was doing that. And so that's what I pretty much mapped out. So I created some categories. And the categories that we created, as we learned through the mind mapping, is ideally one word. And so I ended up coming up with a few words that I thought were really important. One of them being support, help, reflection, results, those kinds of things. So, and then just working through what does that branch look like. So one of them, as an example, was reflection, annual reflection. So I really think it's important to really learn from what's working well in a program and what's not working well. And, at least once a year. I think quarterly is even better, but sometimes experiments need more than just 3 months. So I definitely recommend being reflective about continuous improvement efforts at least in a year. So what would you look at? What went well? What didn't go well? What experiments are you going to do now? What will you change in the program? So all these are part of the reflection under the mind mapping part.
That's nice. And just Tracy and I are going to dive even deeper into this concept of a shield for Q&A. But I love that Tracy sort of sparked the conversation with the mind map, right? So already giving us both sort of some different ways this could go. So I love that. And it was great to see that sort of expand and see your thinking in action, because you started this. So we're sparked. We were visiting mind mapping because Tony Dottino collaborated with Tony Buzan, who wrote the book on mind mapping. His gifts, obviously, to the world live on. And so it made me go study, who he's the OG, original gangster. I remember I said this OG to my aunt the other day. She's like, OG, what's that? I was like, okay, so I need to do some. I know my aunt's not listening to this podcast, but I figured I need to explain that for So he found this to help with not just creativity, but mind mapping helps with learning. It helps with memory. And I was impressed. He devoted 40 years of study into what makes mind maps effective. And he looked at it from all angles, psychology and education, and just his own use and what made it useful for him. So Tracy touched on some of these, but he really advocates starting with a central image. And the adage is that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And whether or not that math is absolutely accurate, we do know that the human brain processes images 60 1,000 times faster than text. We also retain images longer. It stimulates memory, associations, and thought. And next, as Tracy showed, you draw branches from that central image, that radiate out. And what's key, and the MURAL app does this, is that they form arcs as opposed to straight lines. And Tony described that as ideas and thoughts are organic, and the curved lines attract more creativity. I'm gonna trust him on this. And then you can add single word headings to the Radiant, right? As Tracy did. And he was really firm on the single word guide. And his reasoning is that if you start adding whole phrases, you start to limit yourself, and you want the map to basically be this exploding supernova, his words, and that you could branch, right, to a third level, to a fourth level, to a fifth level, and so on infinitely. So just this idea, because that's how your brain works, right? There's not a limit there. He also encourages colors, and I saw that MURAL automatically gave us colors, and MURAL has a great ability to let you add images, right? You can grab icons, you can grab images, just put in a topic, and it'll just give you in lots of different formats, and all that boosts creativity. So like I said, Tracy and I'll delve more into the concept of a shield in our Q&A session. But doing this made me want to put mind mapping to use for a few projects I'm involved with. So how about you?
Yeah, actually, I'm working with a client right now, and they're doing a lot of micro improvements. So they pick a topic and then they brainstorm a bunch of micro improvements. And I think a mind mapping would be amazing for that.
Go for it, man. Check out mind mapping in your favorite app. I'm Elizabeth Swan, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast. In a short while, you get to hear our interview with Tony Dottino, who founded something called the USA Memory Championship in November of '97. That's a ways back. And he recently hosted the 26th championship. That's impressive.
Up next is Q&A.
Today's question is, what is a shield, and how can it help change agents actually change things? And Tracy, as she described, used this concept. We got it from Tony, and she wanted to play with that in the MURAL mind map. And he was referring to shield, a shield that shaped his career, which was a fascinating story, which you're going to hear about in the interview. But Tracy, do you want to elaborate on what Tony was referencing?
Yeah, so it was funny because, wow, we could have talked to him for hours about some of his experiences, but he was really talking about when he was doing some work at IBM, and he had to show the waste, the waste that was happening, and quantifying the waste. And he had a lot to share with us, but I remember him saying that he was getting a lot of pushback from people. People were challenging his numbers, and people were challenging, why are you doing this? And why are you putting these numbers together? And he was under attack, really. The organization wasn't really happy with what was being uncovered. And I can't say that he was blaming the people, but it was just, making people, it sounded like people were getting a little defensive, and he was very thankful for having what he called a shield. And the shield was a person, right, in a position, in this particular application, as he was telling us, that protected him from backlash, or just kept saying, you're doing good work, and don't worry, just keep going, keep going, keep going. And then he, I guess, referenced that he had a good shields for a lot of his career, which wouldn't it be nice if we all had some shields like that?
I want a shield. It's such a great image and concept. What are the ways we could shield ourselves and others so we could do our best work? In that immediate description, the example was Tony's, right? I think he had that CFO just backing up his numbers, right? He said, because Tony was from accounting, and he's just like, hey guys, I'm just reporting what I found for numbers, and everyone was challenging the numbers, like you said, but he's like, I'm backing him up. And that was huge. And I can remember, it reminded me of a shield that I had. And this was back with, I was heading up the Starwood Hotels and Resorts rollout of continuous improvement effort worldwide. And we started in the US. And I had built a simulation that was going to be proof of concept to roll out this improvement effort. And, we sort of built it and experimented a little bit, but now we were going to run it with all like the area directors and all of the bigwigs, all the leadership. And James Hyman was running the rollout at the time within Starwood, and he fell on his sword. He told everybody, he told all the leadership, he's like, you're coming to this. You're going to join in this simulation. You're going to engage. You're going to play your roles in this sort of made up business scenario. And it wouldn't have happened without him. And it went so well. It definitely shifted the thinking. It got written up in the Wall Street Journal. It was really exciting. But I remember always that James played that role, and they would have never agreed to play if he hadn't backed me up. So what's another interpretation of SHIELD for you, Tracy?
Gosh, I have so many stories right now, and your story just prompted one. I don't know, I'm wrestling between telling this story and telling another example. So I'll do this one first. So I think in regards to a continuous improvement program as a whole, I think one of the shields that people miss is that they become known as a training program, right? So they become a training program, and what's the first thing that gets axed when, times get tough? Training. But that really should not be what the continuous improvement group is looked at upon. They should not be looked at as a training group. They should be looked at as an indispensable group to help make the organization better and help get things done. So how do you do that? How the shield is you tie your work to the organization's goals, strategic initiatives, and you embed it in making that happen, and you help deliver those things. But if you only become a training program, you will get axed. Yeah. We've seen it so many times. So don't make the mistake of becoming a training program. You want to strengthen your shield by becoming more indispensable.
Nice, Tracy. I'm loving this. This is the way this thing is kind of unfurling these concepts. And it made me think about another shield that I deal with. I just dealt with it last week with a group from UC San Diego Health in their Greenbelt program. And I rely on supervisors and managers shielding these students, right? They need time to attend the workshops. They need time to work on an improvement opportunity that they've identified. They need to bring that to fruition. And the university, UCSD Health, created a document called a project authorization form. It's a contract sort of between the university and the supervisor, whoever approved this student to be in this class and to take on the training and do an improvement effort. And it spells out how much time they're going to be in training, how much time it's going to take them to actually work on a process to come up with a new standard way of doing it. And they have to sign it. They have to sign this thing saying, I'm going to make time for the student. I'm going to make sure they have coverage. I'm going to allow them to attend all this training and do all this work. And it makes it palpable. It gives them detailed, times that the student is going to be engaged in this. And, by week 3, which was this past week from the group I'm working with now, they had to get that signed and sent into extended study. So I rely on that shield, as do the students, right? So many ways to consider this term.
Really? Yeah. Great. I don't know. Okay, I'll share the one last thing and then we'll move on. So many years ago, I was helping a client, and there was a bunch of executive vice presidents in there, and we were trying to figure out what kinds of projects to pick for their first round of continuous improvement projects. And so we're using a project selection criteria matrix. And, you don't really think that's a shield, but so what happened was they ended up, there was, I want to say 18 projects on there, and the executive vice president and all of her direct reports ended up picking 8 projects that they were going to go forward with. And all of those projects, it was the customer benefit. It was improving the customer experience. It wasn't the money projects that were picked. It wasn't about saving money. It was about the customer experience. And when I observed that, I said, hey, I was just wondering, did you guys know that you picked all the customer experience projects and there was no dollar projects picked? And the executive vice president looked at me and said, we make plenty of money. We need to improve the customer experience. So I was like, all right, let's do it. So we went for 6 months. We were supporting these projects and they were coming up, everything's going great. And we go to, we're doing a final project presentation in front of the same group, like 6 months later, right? So all of them are presenting. Sorry, my dog's barking. So could you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. So all of them are presenting. Bailey, no. Sorry, Stephen. So we're in the room. All of them are presenting. And there happens to be, God damn it. Sorry. I'm going to shut the door. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So we're in the room presenting the projects, and there was a finance guy in there at the same time, and he kept saying, where's the money? Where's the dollars? This is 6 months later. And then the executive looked at me and goes, yeah, Tracy, where's the money? And I said, wait a minute. I go, 6 months ago, you guys filled out this project selection criteria matrix, and you said you wanted to improve the customer experience. Dead silence, right? And then the executive vice president goes, oh yeah, Joe, shut up. Joe was the finance guy. Whew, I almost got fired.
There was a dent in that shield, Tracy. It was a big dent.
It was a big dent.
Person, cover that dent right up. There was
I had to push it out from the inside.
Get this thing back in action. Good Lord.
So anyway, phew, thank God I had that project selection criteria matrix readily available.
Yeah, I guess some people need to be reminded that they are the shield.
Yeah, hello.
Yep. No, it's what that project authorization form is. By the way, you're a shield. You are a shield.
Yeah,
That should be on
exactly.
the cover of it. We should think that the imagery. I love the imagery. We could bring that up more. Okay, now we're going to bring mind maps and shields together. And that is with Tony.
Great. I'm Tracy O'Rourke, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast. We host these monthly, so you can go to www.jitcafe.com and go to our podcast page.
Coming up next, it's an interview with our featured guest, Tony Dottino. Tracy, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Tony?
I would love to. So Tony Dottino, absolute pleasure in meeting with him. He is the founder of Dottino Consulting Group, where he helps organizations perform while they transform by connecting strategy to people, intellectually and emotionally. So he was part of the team that helped shape the original Malcolm Baldrige Award criteria, and his work influenced foundational elements of what became Six Sigma. Today, Tony brings his passion for improvement into complex spaces, such as healthcare, blending organizational excellence with insights from neuroscience, memory, and human motivation. Now that is a trifecta. And we are honored to have Tony the trifecta at the cafe. Hi, Tony. Welcome to the Just in Time Cafe. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. It's a little bit chilly here this morning. We had an 85-degree day yesterday, and now it's only 55. So it's a little more chilly.
And where are you dialing in from?
Windermere, Florida, which is my backyard's 3 miles from the Magic Kingdom Castle, so I get to listen to fireworks every night.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to celebrate every day.
He says it's getting a little
Except,
old though.
except when you try to go to sleep, and they're shooting fireworks at midnight.
Yeah,
Hmm.
he's not feeling the magic anymore. It's great to have you, Tony.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you. I look forward to our half hour together.
Mm. All right, Tracy, let's fire some questions at Tony.
So, Tony, I mean, you have been doing continuous improvement for a very long time. So just give us a little, just give us a little background on your journey and who you've worked with in your career.
My goodness, I
I
got
mean, oh,
started.
yeah,
I
go
got
ahead.
started in the world of Phil Crosby
Mm,
and Joseph Juran
mm,
when I was a finance person at IBM. And one of the things that had happened in IBM was that we had our computer systems shut down the banks of Chicago. And at the
Ooh.
time, our chief financial officer played golf with Phil Crosby. And the next thing the chief financial officer told him, or Phil Crosby told Paul Rizzo at that time, was you need to give me a finance guy because he's going to go travel around the country and he's going to calculate the IBM cost of quality. I was a
Mm-hmm.
new person into this finance department, and everybody in the department thought we're going to work on quality like that is a real joke. So we're not going to take anybody with any kind of seniority and give them that job. And I
Uh-huh.
got the short straw as the last person into the department.
Uh-huh.
And I got to travel around the country going into IBM manufacturing, office structure. I mean, I got to go all over the place and calculating how much was IBM wasting on poor performance or inefficiencies in the operation. And what
So
was
it sounds,
very interesting about that is I
yeah.
had one of Phil Crosby's key guys travel with me who, in my opinion, knew more about the continuous improvement, knew more about the nuts and bolts of how to really influence behavioral change in the organization than listening to Phil Crosby get up and do a talk about quality and things of that sort. So I was blessed to travel and live with the guy that really understood the nuts and bolts.
Hmm.
And when we
who was that?
started at this thing, Crosby had given our senior executives a number that's, about 2 to 3% of your revenues are going to be in non-quality. And I'm traveling around the country and I'm going to manufacturing, different office locations. I mean, I'm just going into all different nuts and bolts and really trying to find out in our manufacturing quality control where we're fixing it. And the number is starting to go into double digits. And so it's not 2%, it's not 10%, it's like 17% of what we
Hmm.
were spending in our manufacturing, quality control, engineering. Oh God, it was like unbelievable. And I had to go present this to the IBM presidents. And fortunately, I was given a shield so that I wouldn't get killed in the crossfires. And so the first time I presented the data to the IBM presidents back in the early 80s, it was like, what? And so fortunately, I had a CFO who was there with me who basically said, I want to just let you know, I have blessed these numbers. Tony isn't pulling them out of his whatever, and they're real. Well, the division presidents at that time said, we don't believe them. So I was sent out to every division with the chief financial officer of each of the divisions, and there were 7 of them at the time.
Mm,
And I had to take each division chief financial officer with me to go show them how I built the numbers. And when I came back for a replay, the number went from 17 to 20
Oh
with
my goodness.
with the blessing of every chief financial officer.
Hmm.
At which point, our president at the time, who I just absolutely loved, was John Akers, who really was John Akers taking over from John Opal at that time. John Akers said to me in his office one day, he said, Tony, if this is what we're doing in manufacturing and where we think we have focused on quality for umpty-ump years and have prided ourselves, what are we doing in all of our infrastructure groups? So I did an analysis, being a finance guy, and basically discovered that half of our expenses were in the support groups, and the other half was in the manufacturing. So Mr. Akers commissioned me to go out and do a study in 17 other departments or functions. So administration, let's go see what we're doing in accounting. What are we doing in our ordering system? What are we doing in purchasing? What are we doing in our expediting of shipments and all this? So I did these 17 studies and came back with numbers that were just mind-blowing.
So
And
what I
that got
want
me
to know
started
is,
in saying, hey, can you, not only can you go calculate these numbers, can you go work with the indirect departments that were not involved with manufacturing? Can you go in and start to help them do something to improve these numbers? And that's how I got started in the continuous improvement world.
okay, so the good news is it wasn't just studies, studies, studies. Then they actually did something about it.
Yes. I got to build an expertise because the first thing I had to go do was justify the numbers and say, God, and then the debates were, are these really inefficiencies? Are these really failures? I said, well, what would you like to call them? I mean, it was like, there was the huge debate. And fortunately, I had Phil Crosby's guy, a guy named Lance Arrington, who really had this stuff down cold. And this guy was awesome and taught me so much, and because we lived in hotels and we lived on weekends and we had dinners together, and you pick the brains of somebody that knows what they're doing, and you get a little smarter by just listening half the time. And so that got me then to, well, we got people in quality control, we have quality assurance, they know how to go fix these quality problems, and I'm saying, well, but we don't know what to do with these indirect departments. And so that used to come to me. I'd get a call from a division president and said, Tony, can you come out to San Jose, or can you come to Raleigh, North Carolina, or can you? And I got to go to different places, and I got treated like, I was treated like royalty coming to these places because nobody knew exactly what to do. And they were looking at me as like, you seem to be the only guy that really knows what's going on in these particular areas. So help us and tell us what we need to do. So I started developing these different teaching modules of here's what we're trying to find, here's what the numbers are. Now, how are we going to make how do we get them to do better? And it was through the experience of working in the accounting department that I created what we then call process improvement. And what we were doing is in the accounting department, we discovered that we had an incoming department where they processed all the incoming accounting entries. And we wound up having 4 full-time people that did nothing but correct accounting miscodes right before they went to the income statement. And so the first experience I had was to say, okay, I had an accounting controller who said, Tony, you're going to get all my managers together. We're going to stick this stuff into a string and we're going to figure it out. And so I remember putting some of these numbers up on the board, and the controller gets on the board and says, so you over there, you start this thing, and you over there wind up fixing all of their mistakes. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one head count from the fixers, and we're going to put it back here on the entry point. And then we're going to look at what's going on in the middle of all this, and we're going to connect the dots. And that was my introduction to process improvement. And people don't believe, like, an accounting department is where you started this whole journey of process improvement, and it became Sigma eventually. I'll give you that story a bit. But it was started in an accounting department with my boss, who actually was like, Tony, you're going to help us figure this all out. And so we took this head count, and before you knew it, we were able to eliminate 3 of the fixers. We kept one there because we needed to make sure there was integrity in our published financial reports, but we were able to take 3 of those fixes and move them back into the string. And then what was really exciting, and IBM made a big deal about this, we were able to get our financial reports out to Wall Street 2 days sooner than we ever could before. That was a big story.
So that was public, right? The rest of it was internal, but that
You
suddenly
got it.
now you're dealing with when Wall Street
Hey,
sees the results.
and we actually use that as a benefit to marketing. Look at you use IBM computers in our systems, and look at what you can do with your systems and stuff, and how you can improve the efficiencies. It was really through the process improvement, through the string of getting these people working together. Now, I could go on and on with stories of that, but that then took me back to IBM's field service, and then so I got to be good at this stuff in the non-manufacturing. Then I got to go work in the IBM field service area and start seeing where problems were in our service area and moving those back into the early stages of manufacturing design. And so I just became by default an expert at something I never would have dreamt possible.
Yeah.
I feel the same.
Yeah, right. No, we all came at this from places.
And what my chief financial officer said to me one day, he says, Tony, he said, when we put you into this job, we had no idea what this was going to turn out to be. But your energy and your passion and your determination to see this through is going to earn you a 2-level promotion, and you're now going to run the show on this stuff. And by the way, here comes some money that comes, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, they told me that the bearer of harpoons and arrows, because when you started putting this stuff up in front of people, it was like, no, it was disbelief. Like, where are you getting these numbers from? And do you know what you're doing? And so defending for my life, it got me to really make sure I could button stuff down. And before I would speak, I had to know what I was talking about, and it had to be backed up, and I had to have it backed up by the chief financial officers.
Well, they couldn't kill the messenger because you said you had your shield of the CFO. So that was critical for you not.
That was huge. That was absolutely huge. In fact, God, I hate to keep using names out here for this, but God, John Cunningham was Tony, you're coming with me. And I would go sit in John Aiken's office, and John would go in first and say, you're not going to like what Tony's going to come in and tell you, but you're not going to hurt him. So I'd be left out at the secretary's desk, and he'd go in and he'd come back out and he'd say, come on in.
No, he was critical to you not, succumbing to the harpoons and arrows.
Yeah.
So tell us, you briefly glanced on it. Tell us the morph, like what you described is kind of fascinating, right? You took a downstream kind of rework department and then plugged a reworker into the generator, basically the root cause of the rework. And then that led to the discoveries and the reductions. It's kind of fascinating and I don't know, but it makes me have a whole bunch of other thoughts. But anyway, you said then it morphed into what we called Six Sigma. So I want to.
Oh God, yes. So let me tell you that story, right? So I'm in finance, right? And the vice president of quality says to my boss, he says, I want to take Tony into my department for a year, and I want you to guarantee him he's going to continue on the fast track in finance. My boss wouldn't do that. He says, you're not taking him, you can have him part-time. And so I had two things that grew out of that. The one thing that sparked the Sigma was this example of this accounting department stringing 5 different functions, silos, into a string. And so I worked with the quality guys, and we created this presentation called Process Management. We said, okay, IBM has got the greatest thing in the world in East Fishkill, New York, where they know how to manage a process of building, starting with sand and coming out with substrates and go into computers. What we're going to do is we're going to take those disciplines and those gates and how they manage that, and we're going to mirror it to this accounting thing that you've done. So I spent a week putting together a presentation, taking the management disciplines from East Fishkill's high-tech area and bringing them to what we just did it, not knowing what the disciplines were in this accounting department. And he said, what we're going to be doing is putting this presentation together, and we're going to take it to the IBM board of directors, when they meet with 17 of our customer vendors that we think are going to be, and there's going to be this big powwow in Armonk, New York, 1984, fall of 84, and we're going to showcase this thing that we're doing in the accounting department as a new direction in how to manage continuous improvement outside of manufacturing. And so I got to work on a presentation that got put together and delivered by the IBM Vice President of Quality. Actually, he wanted me to do the presentation, but the IBM president says, no, this is a big time meeting, man. We don't let, staff people come in to this kind of meeting. But, so my vice president of quality says, Tony, you're going to do all my cribbing, you're going to do all my practicing because you know this stuff better than I do. And I want to make sure. Anyway, fast forward, he hits this presentation. There's a guy in Motorola in this presentation. And he looks at this presentation, and I got this story from the vice president of quality who had dinner with this guy, and he sat down with him. And what this guy said to my vice president of quality, we've tried the Sigma, we've tried the zero defects, we've tried quality improvement, we've tried manufacturing improvement, but we haven't tried this thing called process. But I can't take this back to Motorola and try to sell it as another one of these quality deals that is coming out of any place. So my vice president says, and then he takes out his calculator and he did some calculation and he said what he was looking for, how many deviations from zero defects could we call this in sigmas?
Oh, okay.
And that's where the name Six Sigma came from. He happened to be at that IBM meeting talking to our vice president.
Okay.
So he got good. Look, here's what he was doing. He was trying to say, here's the words that I got. I need to get my engineers to eat the dog food, and I can't go back with zero defects or quality improvement anymore. But if I call it a Sigma and I give it the closest, I can get him to eat that dog food.
Oh my gosh, I love this story. I've never heard this story. And I'm going to be honest and tell you that I want to punch the person who came up with that name because that is like nobody wants to call it Six Sigma. But now I understand why they picked that name.
Think of Six Sigma as the clearest number of sigmas to zero defects is what he was after. And he couldn't call it that name. And I'll tell you, there were 4 people that could verify that story in my lifetime. Unfortunately, none of them are alive anymore. Because when I've come to not share that story because people thought, really, you were involved with the creation of sin. It's like, you know what? I don't need to hang my shingle on that. But that's the story. And I always say to people, if you want to prove it, I can guarantee you that Sigma did not start any sooner than November of 1984, because that's when they had the big powwow with all the right people, and Motorola was invited to that meeting.
Interesting.
And that was the guy that took it and said, let me do boom, 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 boom. And unfortunately, my godfather is not any longer. I was a young kid in those days. I mean, I'm a lot older today, but I've been at this, as you can see, we're almost at this 50 years. But that was my 1984 presentation. And after that, I got to go to Japan and teach this stuff in Japan.
What?
Unbelievable. I was the process management guru. Like, what? So I got invited to go spend 3 weeks in Japan. And I will tell you, one of the thrills in my life is I go to Tokyo, to the IBM conference center there, and IBM's computers were starting to slip. They were no longer number 1 or 2 in IBM Tokyo. We were losing it to Fujitsu and a couple of Hitachi. And so we're going to send this guy, Tony, over to Japan for 3 weeks. So I went over, and I will tell you, the first time I had the presentation, they put me in this auditorium. There had to be 500 Japanese people in there. And the speaker of the meeting comes up to me before, he says, Tony, I don't want you to be concerned that there will be some people that are going to be sleeping or appear to be napping during your presentation. But when they heard Tony Dottino was coming from the United States, they just needed to see who this guy was, and they wanted to meet him. and listen to what he had to say. And I'm like, what? Tony, who? I used to have to look in the mirror and say, what an impact. I had a dear friend that said, Tony, you're creating history in what you're doing in the world of business. And so I had a dear friend who's one of the top behavioral psychologists in the country. I'd go spend time in his house. He'd help me put stuff together. And he started to say, you need to start putting the human touch into this. It's just too dry, and it's not. And here's what he used to say. This is a behavioral guy, Dr. Paul Brown, one of the top behavioral guys in this country. He said, if you don't put some juice into this thing, it's going to die. And sure enough, it started to die, and I'm looking for the juice. 1989, we're looking to how do we sustain this stuff? How do we reinforce it? And again, the chief financial officer says to me one day, he says, hey, there's this guy coming over here from England, and he's going to talk all about creativity, and his name is Tony Buzan. We're going to take tickets for this seminar he's doing in New York City, and 4 of us are going to go to this seminar, and we're going to listen to this guy for 3 days and see if there's anything we can grab from it. This was 1989, New York City, at the big Hilton Hotel. And the first thing he asked us was, can any of you in the audience, and there's like 45 American executives in this conference room, and he says, can any of you tell us what the inventory of thinking skills are that exist in the human brain? Like, what? Yeah, can you tell us what the thinking skills are, as science has revealed, about the inventory of thinking skills in the human brain? It's like, these are 45 American executives, and so he starts off, that hit me.
So let me ask you, Tony. So Tony Buzan,
Yes.
who you speak so highly of, co-wrote one of your books. Can you tell a little about your book and the idea of grassroots leaders?
God, yeah. So I'll get there. So Tony, I sat with him. A quick story. I asked him if I could have dinner with him that night, and I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning on the first night of the workshop, on the second night of the workshop, and the third night of the workshop. And by the end of the third night of the workshop, he says, "You're going to need to leave IBM and come work with me." I'm like, this guy is out of his freaking mind. I mean, he comes from England. He's a psychologist, and he's telling me, he says, Tony, your passion for this, you will become the Tony Buzan of the United States. And I'm like, yeah, okay. This guy is just blowing smoke in my face is what he's doing. Fast forward, I started to take some of his principles of the human brain. Example. There are 7 principles of human thought that go on and generate creativity and memory. And he said, can you tell me what the formula for creativity is? And I'm like, okay, what's the formula? Oh, I've been to the Bono's Thinking Hats. I've been to this class. IBM's had a dozen classes on creativity. I've never heard of anybody talk about memory. And here's this guy Buzan saying, if you don't have, by the way, we were looking at re-engineering in the company, starting with white paper. And I'd call Buzan up and he'd say, Tony, that's not a brain-friendly thing. It's never going to last. It's going to die because it's got no sustainability to it. And by the way, you can't create off of a blank sheet of paper. So the first thing you have to know is what's there today? What's the existence? And we have to know what that is in terms of your memory. Memory plus new information is the spark that generates creativity. So if you want to enhance creativity, you must enhance people's ability to retain and recall information. And so it became, how are we retaining? What is it that we're doing that helps us to retain critical information so it sits there waiting for a spark of something new to come in and just generate? And he said, that's the natural form for brains, creativity, and we all have it if we understood how to store what we want to retain because it's important. And by the way, I've developed a tool over 30 years called mind mapping. Wait a minute, that's got pictures and it's got images. I'm a finance guy. I work in numbers in black and white, and you're trying to hand me with pictures and stuff?
Yeah, how'd that happen?
The first time I walked into my boss's office, he said, "You are not showing those graphs with those cartoons and those funny pictures with colors on them. You're not going to the president with that chart." So, well, but wait a minute. This chart really lays it out in the simplest way that's going to map to our mind, that's going to be able to communicate 8 slides into one. So he said, "Look, if you're going in with that thing, it's going to be your ass. And I'm not backing you up on this one."
No more CFO shield.
Yeah.
It went away on that. But you know what? I had the passion and the belief in it to go in and use it as one slide to explain some of the challenges and issues we had. And you know what? I was fortunate enough. I had a president that got it, that understood it. He said, "You're going to be my," and he gave me, I got another promotion. It's great. I got to go be, now again, if you told me what I was going to do and if I knew what I was doing when I was doing it, I probably would have been too afraid to do it. But I was having fun. I was learning things. I was making a difference. And people were calling me a hero in terms of what I was doing. So how do you turn all that stuff away? And so, and I was big IBM. I wanted, people would say, "You're like going to be the savior of IBM." And I'm like, "What do you mean savior?" It's like, a little bit too much, guys. I'm just a person that works in the corporation. That's it. That's who I am. And so when Buzan came along and started teaching me, do you have a clear definition of what the goals are, and have people connected 3 parts of the brain to what you're trying to do? Okay, wait a minute. Now we're going to go back to brain stuff, and we're going to have to connect three parts of the brain. That was probably the most, in my consulting work today, I use that more than anything I think I could have learned. And what are those 3 parts? The first part is, do people understand why it makes sense to want to do whatever this vision or this mission is? Are people buying into its common sensibility? Part number 1, the left and right brain. You know those 14 modalities he asked us about in the class? If those 14 modalities are not connecting to it, you don't have a goal, and you're chasing political correctness. Number 2, where's the emotional buy-in to this thing? There's 13 different emotional items you can have on the scale. We can start with passion, and we can end on the bottom with fear. If people are operating out of fear, 9 out of 10 people are going to compromise and play political correctness. If you have people with passion and energy and enthusiasm, their brain's going to ignite. And by the way, what I've subsequently learned in my years and years of study, the emotional brain controls the rational brain 9 out of 10 times.
Oh yeah, it's much faster.
Yep.
The third thing that people, and this is the interesting part, I've done a lot of work in the hospital world, and this is the one that shows up more than anything. What's the history book showing on all of this? Meaning, what are people's prior experiences that come to play when they're looking at the rational and emotional, and are they just trying to survive and hide in a corner? And so when you're doing a workshop on this process, the first thing you got to find out is, why are people thinking this is important? How are they feeling about it? And what's the history book that's in the background playing?
Yeah, because that impacts how they're feeling about it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so when I'm working with leaders, and I will tell you, years ago when I first started with this, you could not walk into an executive meeting and ask anybody about feelings. They'd throw you the hell out. Like, wait, are you some kind of psychologist or psychologist? What? Get the hell out of here with that. Don't give me that soft crap.
Yeah.
So you had to be very tactful. Again, I've learned a lot of how to communicate with people, not to get killed. Survival. And so that was one of the most powerful lessons I learned from Tony Buzan. And then, he'd come to New York and we'd spend days together. Now, why would we spend days together? Because in 1996, he convinced me to create the United States National Memory Competition. You're going to become an expert on memory, which is going to help you become an expert on creativity and how you communicate to these things and how you retain the critical information that people must have if they're going to be creative and solve their ongoing business problems and generate whole new pathways of how to do business. So you're going to become a memory expert. And I'm like, not really. It's like,
Yes.
even the word, right? So in 1997, he came over with one of his colleagues. We found a conference room in New York City, and we created the first USA Memory Championship.
How cool.
And I had more TV, radio, newspaper. I was on more radio shows. I was in more publications in 1997 than I could have ever dreamt. And we had to give tickets to the reporters outside because we couldn't fit all of them in at once into the conference room.
Jeez.
That's wild.
And that was the very first event, 1997. This year will be my 27th event. And I'm
Wow.
actually working with a TV producer to put on a TV show that comes out of Los Angeles. He's
All right,
won
Tony.
Cool.
So unfortunately, we're out of time. But
Okay.
I'm very interested and intrigued to learn about these memory championships. And we're going to probably have to have you on again, or we'll probably have to get some information from you and provide a link to learn more about what these memory championships
Yeah.
are, because I think that sounds super interesting. And all I want to know is, do I get a medal?
Yeah, what do we win? Tony, what do we win?
Yeah, what do we win?
You get a nice trophy. Now here's what you do win. You get to go find a new job that gets you a hell of a lot more money than you ever would have thought. There's a half a dozen of my memory champions that are doing pretty darn well.
All
That's
right.
awesome.
I love it. I love it.
Well, Tony,
I'll sign up for that. I've enjoyed this. Time goes by too darn fast. As I
I
said,
I know.
know.
We've only
You're full
scratched
of
the surface.
fabulous stories
Yes, fabulous
and,
stories.
and things that impacted Tracy and my lives and careers, and just fascinating hearing the names and the events that led to the world as we know it. So really fun to get
Yes.
the window you're providing, Tony. And I love that you've got another event coming up. This is just too fun. This is great.
Yes.
I'm working on a TV show. I got hooked up with MIT. We're doing a major research. A grant has been submitted. We'll know in April. Teaching 65-year-olds memory techniques that are demonstrating some early. So I could go on in that world. It's another whole world.
That's exciting.
Very cool, Tony. We'll provide links for our listeners. We're going to give them a link to connect with you on LinkedIn, and then we're going to give them all the links of all the crazy and fabulous things you're doing. And we look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, thanks for
I
coming
will
to the
look for.
cafe.
You guys make it a fun experience. I really enjoyed doing this. I look forward to our next go.
Well, we're going to thank Mojgan for bringing you into our world, and we will talk more. Take care, Tony.
If you are living in or around San Diego, guess what? I'm going to be the instructor for the upcoming in-person UC San Diego Greenbelt class starting on May 7th, 2026 of this year. I think we have a few more spots open. Actually, I'm doing an online live instructor starting tomorrow, and it is sold out. So you better check if you're interested, and hopefully you can come and attend in person. It's every Friday for 5 weeks, starting May 7th from 9 to 3 p.m. And there's a project presentation in July. Now, the cool thing about this course is, because I'm an instructor, that we actually get to follow the Problem Solver's Toolkit, the book that you and I co-authored, Elisabeth, and it's guaranteed to be an adventure. So we'll leave you a link, and if you're interested in joining me on this educational journey.
Oh, yeah. Join Tracy. And if you haven't yet, you should definitely catch last month's podcast episode, Campus Kaizen, with Bernadette Hill and Priya Venkatasan. These two have transformed the UC Davis continuous improvement culture, and they did it through dogged experimentation, making mistakes, and then some adjustments. This one sparked a lot of conversation, so I would definitely recommend it.
Cool. And last but not least, stay tuned for my next lean rap spoof parody music video This is it's a tale of experimentation, mistakes, and refinement. Still working on it. And a lot of smooth dance moves from my San Diego posse who participated in this video this time. So you're going to get the latest from the debut. It's coming soon with local icons such as Wi-Fi Lily and Justin Timberlake, which is Ashley Gambier. And of course, me, Miss Fix-A-Lot.
I love that.
So stay tuned for all the news by joining our community at the Just in Time Cafe.
Thanks for joining me and Tracy for another episode. You are our favorite thing about the Just in Time Cafe, and we look forward to being your lifelong learning partners.
So join us next month and every month for your jolt of lean caffeine.